Hello, Tim Wilmot here, and welcome to my watercolour demonstration. This time thinking about how to simplify a scene. Now this is my subject for this demonstration. This is Burano, a little island off just a short way from Venice, Italy. And the reason I chose this is that, well, it's a very popular tourist destination, very popular place to visit for the day if you're staying in Venice. Lots of colourful houses, each, as you can see here, each of the houses are very vibrant colour, all the different colours of the rainbow. So quite a challenging topic. Subject for a watercolor painting, and as I say, it's trying to simplify things. So the complexities here are, well, those colors first of all, and center stage, this bridge here, this footbridge with lots of small railings here, very thin railings, lots of little details there. Then coming down into the waterway, this canal here, we've got lots of reflections. Reflections are a tricky thing to try and get right and make realistic, and try not to get bogged down in any detail. Lots of boats here as well. Over on the left hand side, these railings here on the left hand side of this bridge, this little sort of slipway coming down, quite a lot of complex geometric shapes there with the lights coming through the railing. So that is another little challenge in trying to replicate that in a fast and loose style. And all the windows, of course, loads of windows, lots of details around the windows as well, tiling on the rooftops, figures. We've got 4 figures on this bridge coming down towards us. So I'm going to try and simplify that. I'm going to try and reduce that by half. We'll have just 2 figures there, because these two, over the shoulders, this guy here, not really doing much from a composition point of view. So we'll dispense with them and just have a couple of figures there, which I'll just do in my own style, not replicate their clothing anyway. So yeah, trying to, I mean, this is all about looking at a photograph and thinking, what can you change? Don't copy the photo. What's the point of copying a photograph, apart from a point of view of maybe practicing something, or if you're an illustrator, maybe that's what you want to do. But we're trying to make a piece of art here. We're trying to make something pleasing to the eye, and from a composition point of view, there's a bit of a competition going on here between these figures touching each other, these figures right over the shoulder there. They're not really doing anything from a composition point of view. Okay, so let's see how we get on. So the paper I'm using for this watercolor tutorial is Saunders Waterford. This is cold press texture, which is also referred to as NOT, N-O-T. So it's the medium texture, not too rough, not too smooth, just in the middle. And it's secured with some masking tape, DIY masking tape. I'm often asked, do you pre-wet your paper? Do you prepare anyway? No, I don't. It's just straight paper, no preparation at all, just tape down on my board, which is a lightweight Corex board. This is at a slight angle, about 10 degrees, and I'm getting in the initial sketch here with a soft pencil. This is a 3B pencil, starting with the outline of the tops of the buildings, and now here we are getting right this sweeping curve of the footbridge, top and the bottom. I mean, this is a key element of the picture, so we need to get that right and have that nice curve there. And then of course this left hand slope, slipway coming down with the railings on the left hand side. On the right hand side we've got a little bit of perspective going on with the railings coming down towards us. And now figure number 1, starting with the head, shoulders, just quickly drawn in, trying to get the whole thing done in 10-20 seconds or so. I think the longer you concentrate, spend time on doing a figure, the tighter it's going to get. So just do things really quickly. Or if you're not too confident, practice doing figures. Just get a scrap piece of paper out and just do lots of figures in a very, very simple way. Just set yourself a time limit of 5 seconds per figure and see how rapidly you can get all those figures in there in a very simple way. Just head, torso, legs, maybe arms. Just do it very, very quickly. So down to the water, and just a very simple shape of this boat. They're all very small boats in this picture. And think about shapes. Just look at these boats and don't think about what does a boat look like. Just think about what you see. And they're all at different angles. Quite another one of those little challenges. They're not all pointing in the same direction. They're not all one size. So just a little bit of a challenge there with, and I say simplify things by thinking about those shapes. Just try and observe those different angles and objects. So that's the reflection of the tower. And now on to the initial wash, just to get some basic colours down. Sky, this is going to be the finished item, so we won't go over this again. So I'm starting with a mixture of yellow ochre at the horizon level, just coming up a little bit, and then a mixture of cerulean blue and cobalt blue. Just going through my palette on the right hand side, right at the top I got neutral tint, then below that coming down burnt umber, then burnt sienna, yellow ochre, which I've just been using for the base of the sky, viridian green, cobalt green, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, a bright red, which is Windsor red, light red, then cadmium orange, and lemon yellow. So I've done the sky. Now I want to get in a mixture for the footbridge here and the slope coming towards us, leaving unpainted the lines, the horizontal lines going across and then down to the bottom left hand corner. A little bit darker coming towards us, and left hand side, right hand side, not paying too much attention there. Top of the railings on the left hand side, just a little bit of dark colour just to define that edge. And then the background, paint around those figures. The brush I've got is a Raphael mop brush, one of the larger ones, synthetic hairs. Now this is just a very important part of the painting, getting the curve right, following my outline of the top of the bridge, the top of the railings. And then over from left to right, over to the right hand side, the buildings, which will be in sunlight, they'll be brightly lit. Now, the actual gap between the top railing and the bottom of the bridge, using same mop brush, which has got a very nice sharp edge to it, great for doing these sweeping curves in one, hopefully. Just break up that line a bit, just to, so it's not too monotonous, not too false. Deliberately breaking that line with the upper portion, and then the bottom of this gap over to the right hand side. There are some railings going over to the right on the right hand side there. Now, underneath the bridge, slightly bluish mixture, painting around the boats. So underneath the bridge, a little bit of negative painting around the boats. And good bit of moisture on the brush, not too dry. Another curve underneath the bridge. Follow these boats, shapes the boats around, bottom. You can see with the slight gradient I've got, there's a bit of movement of the water coming down, which is what we want, just to help things flow together, blend, come down in a natural manner. Now just mopping up a bit of the accumulation of that first wash. So now we've got to let everything dry, and at this stage I'd normally get out the hairdryer just to speed up the process a little bit. Everything's going to dry a good bit lighter as well, so when we put in that first wash, sometimes we have to go a little bit darker than we first thought, just to compensate for that drying and everything getting lighter. So sometimes it's another level or two in lightness that that wash will get lighter by. And sometimes letting things dry naturally, there's a bit more movement, and I suppose really use the hairdryer if you want to stop that movement process. You want to halt any further blending that's going on. You want to abruptly finish that to go on to the next stage, or if you're pressurized for time. Good reasons for using a hairdryer. So just fast forwarded there, just cut out a little bit of the video. The first wash is dry. And now on to the third stage of the painting. And with a slightly smaller mop brush, so this is another Raphael mop brush, soft aqua is the make. There's a lot of manufacturers of these synthetic mop brushes. Escoda do some very good ones. I think they're called Ultimo, something like that. Very good. But I prefer to use these Raphael brushes at the moment. This is a number 4 in size, and for some reason it's slightly longer brush hairs. So anyway, doing the left-hand building, which is sort of yellowish, and I'm not going to concentrate on these very vibrant colours. I'm concentrating more on the values that I've got here rather than the colours. So thinking about light and dark, certainly quite dark in that bottom left corner. This is in the shade. Sun is in front of us, coming down towards us. So this is a contre-jour type of painting with the light coming towards us. And this second building is of a bluish colour, darker down towards the bottom, carefully painting around those two figures, heads and shoulders. And down on the right hand side, carefully around the shoulders of that right figure. Then we've got to continue along, and this is really background building, so there won't be too much detail in these buildings. Chimney there. I'm sometimes asked, do you mind having these pencil marks showing in the finished painting? And my reply normally is it doesn't matter too much. It sort of adds to that loose appearance of the painting. Sometimes I will rub out, if there's some pencil lines on some bare paper that I haven't painted over, I will rub those out, so just to tidy things up and get a lighter feeling for it. So I just reached for a little bit of neutral tint there just to get a good bit darker towards the base of these buildings and along the top railing, the top of the top railing of the footbridge. Coming along, mixing a number of different hues here to get the right kind of strength that I want, but also trying to vary those different colours. It's not all one colour, it's not too monotonous. So we're now down to the base of the tower. This is another quite important part of the painting, this tower, and as such I'm going to hold the brush closer towards the tip for greater control. Now this brush has got a very good edge to it, so I can almost do the whole painting with the one brush, but it has a nice edge, holding it at the side like that. And then the tower itself, and this tower actually has a slight lean to it, almost, but probably not as extreme as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Just a slight list to it of a few degrees off the vertical. Now continuing on the right hand side, over the rooftops and the top of the railings, over to this brightly lit building on the right hand side. So I'm going to get the roof in first, using the nice sharp edge of this mop brush, and the right hand side, there were trees in there. I'm not going to bother too much about putting in any indication of a tree, but I'll just try and introduce a few different colours into this back wall, and then continuing on down. Of course, we're seeing through the railings to this darker end that's facing us. So I've got to continue that down below the top railing. So a bit of green here, I'm mixing ultramarine blue and my lemon yellow to sort of hint at the fact that there's some kind of foliage on the right hand side, darker towards the bottom with a bit of ultramarine blue. And while this is all still very moist, I'm going back into it with thicker mixes just to introduce different values into that quite large area there over on the right. Back to the left, and what we want to try and do and give an implication of are these geometric shapes, the light coming through these railings, have gone quite dark, but it will dry lighter. And then connect with that first left-hand figure. So the bridge now, the footbridge. With this middle portion, I'm actually leaving a few little gaps here and there, just some random little gaps, just to hint at some light coming through. Continue on over to the right hand side. Just now and then break that line to give us a bit more of a natural feel and connect the bridge railings with the background behind. Now I need to be careful again with this line, keeping that curve. And a few lines there just to suggest the base of this right-hand building. Sometimes I do use my finger to smudge things and just quickly blend two areas together. Now down to the key side and the dark walls on the left, meeting up with these two boats and their hulls. And beyond that second boat, just come over the middle and then the right hand side, the wall of the canal. Over to the very right. So these figures start with their faces and a suitable flesh colour, which is a combination of the cadmium orange, bit of light red, bit of red, and just mixing them in the palette until I get an appropriate flesh tone. Because the figures are, because this is contre-jour, the figures are coming towards us, the light is behind, so their faces will be a little bit darker. Perhaps because of the light behind them. And the torso of figure number 2 down to the legs, and figure number 1. Perhaps this person is connected, is touching the railings. Now this brush is another Raphael brush, slightly smaller. I think this is a size 2. Bottom of figure number 1, legs, slightly different pose from figure number 2. Make sure the legs are long enough. And then there are shadows. First of all, the shadow on the left-hand side. So that they're all connected with each other, doing it all in one. So we now come to figure number 1. And then shadow of figure number 2. And they suddenly look a little bit more realistic with that shadow. Down to the boats and the superstructure on the boats, the top, a few lines going across maybe there's a sort of tarpaulin cover or something like that on top of this boat to protect it. So I've just got a few lines across that as there was in the photograph. So we're now ready for some reflections, and with that boat hole done first, we've got a slightly darker colour, darker tone for the reflections. Now I'm using this mop brush at about a 45-degree angle. Quickly getting in these reflection marks of the background buildings, slowly coming down to the steeple. This it's probably a bell tower, and reflections starting off fairly tight, but then getting a lot looser as I come down towards the end, further away, and round to the right, reflections of the canal wall. Getting, with those reflections getting a little bit more erratic as I come towards the bottom. Bit of a cobalt green there in that reflection. Back over to this main boat, the hull and the reflections. So do the hull first, then the reflections. So the darker reflections will go up into that boat just a little bit, just to give us a soft edge. And I'm just dragging the reflections over to the right hand side just to connect, another way of connecting the left side with the right side. Use the fingertips just a little bit to blend in the colours, mess it up a little bit. Now we're ready for some details now, with a change of brush. This is a synthetic round brush, thicker, darker pigment, adding a bit more definition to the roof line and some chimney tops. Down over the top of that blue building, and just a few verticals to give the impression of those aerials, not too many. Then just continuing along over to the right, picking up a few windows, other architectural details, not too many. Perhaps something in the bell tower there. Over to the right hand side, the right hand building. Just indicate a few windows, not all of them. And on the left hand side, these windows. So I have this band, this lighter band around the windows. As you see, a lot of them in Venice, but typical to the sort of style of window. And then over to the blue house. So slightly different frequency of windows on that one. And this is a good exercise in perspective with these windows to help us. I'm just adding in a few horizontal lines at different angles, leading the eye down through the picture. This is almost dry brush strokes here, so there's not very much water on the brush. So it's going to give us a rough feeling to the line. Now these verticals on the background houses, I'm continuing into the railings of the footbridge, because of course we are seeing through it, and it's just again joining up those different main objects there. Outboard motor of that boat underneath the bridge. Now with a darker mix, just making sure I don't smudge the boat below. Darker mix, just adding in a bit of definition to the top railing. So we've painted around the top of the railing, retained the paper, which is the best way of achieving those highlights, to leave it unpainted. Of course, you could have used masking fluid, you could use white paint at the end, or a white pen. I've seen people use pens, white ink pens. Now these railings, I've just got a few of them, and again we've got broken lines, not one continuous line, just a few of those verticals, not all of them. And they're ending up like dry brush strokes. There's not too much water on those. So with this smaller mop brush, the same one that I used I did the figures with this brush. Want to get in some dry brush strokes again. And the bottom of this bridge, very carefully, almost in one. Over to the right hand side. and then the shadows of this footbridge at a slight angle. Down to the water's edge. So notice I've not bothered painting in all of the boats in this scene, just a couple. Could have been perhaps an option for including a smaller craft on the right hand side, just to the right of the reflection of the steeple. That might have just helped balance things out again, add a little bit. So the left hand side of the railings, the handrail, playing on perspective, coming wider towards us, narrower as we're going further away. Few more vertical railings on the bridge, slightly darker pigment, and then picking up on a few more details around the background buildings. Now I need to add a bit of a definition to the waterline. So smallish synthetic brush and almost a dry brush stroke, picking up a bit of neutral tint. Around the waterline of that boat. Beyond, perhaps just a little indication of a boat over there. Right hand side. Which will be quite strong. And then that diagonal shadow below the bridge, I need to continue it along the water. So this is the reflection or the shadow of the bridge in that bright light. Now, a final thing to get in for highlights is to use some white gouache or Chinese white just to give us some added highlights. and I'll take it straight out the tube, normally with a small brush. We need to get something on the tops of these figures just to emphasize that a little bit more. So a good blob on the head, and then not too much on the shoulders. That's enough, don't overdo it, don't overdo it. And then the railings. Pick up a few horizontals and verticals. Again, not continuous lines. We've got already the top of the bridge and the bottom of the bridge. It would just be a little bit too overcomplicated if we added in another white line in between the two, if there was some greater reflections coming through there. The right hand side. Perhaps just a tiny bit on the right hand side of that figure. Catching the ears. Now, when I've still got this white, I'll just add in a little bit of a border around some of those windows, which is the typical sort of Venetian style. I could have painted around those as I did on the first house, but this is equally as good. So, I think we're done with those white highlights. End of the painting. So, here's the finished painting. I've just slightly cropped the image and adjusted some of the colours. This is a truer reflection of the original painting. So this was a demonstration to explain and go through the simplification of what you see when you're painting from a photograph, practicing what to take out to simplify what you see in front of you. All of those details of the architectural style of the houses, the railings on the bridge, the boats, the reflections. We reduced the 4 figures to 2 figures just to give a greater balance as well. So a little bit of an exercise in composition with those 2 figures reduced from 4 figures, balancing out the church steeple, the church bell tower on the right hand side with its reflection, and the boats down below the bridge. Hopefully you have picked up something from watching this tutorial. Please see more of my work up on my website, timwilmot.com, timwilmot.com. If you want any information on a watercolor demonstration or a watercolor tuition or online course which I can do for you, please let me know. Email me, timothywilmot@gmail.com, or go to my website and find more of my contact details. I also arrange a few more public workshops and painting holidays through the year, again, go to my website and you get more details of that. So thanks for watching, and hopefully catch up with you soon. Bye bye.